Redline Logbook here to start a new series talking about all the arcs of the D. Gray Man series. Now I'm fully caught up with the manga, and so I have hindsight as a guide for me. But I promise not to do any spoilers for anyone who isn't caught up on the manga. And so we will start with the first arc, known as the Introduction Arc, which is the first 7 chapters. And the Introduction Arc really lives up to the name because it focuses on the first 3 chapters, building up the world, not even the main character. Alan is very much treated as a set piece for the beginning of the story, and we actually focus on 2 unimportant people who are there just to set the stage of what D. Gray Man is. We start off in a small town with a cop named Moore and her partner Charles, and they're investigating a building where a bunch of people have gone missing. This building has gotten the rumor that it's haunted. Obviously, she doesn't believe this and decides to investigate with her partner. They go in, they get separated, and that's where she meets Alan, the main character. Once again, he's a side character at this point. But the important thing is she hears her partner scream, she rushes to go find him again, and he's there with a hole in his chest, and then he turns to dust and dies. Alan then covers her mouth, tells her not to breathe in the poison from the Akuma, and then she wakes up back in her police station, and the first thing she does is tries to tell her chief that her partner Charles is dead. He goes, "We know what happened," and they currently are interrogating Alan Walker as a suspect for the murder. And this interrogation process is basically used as a way to explain what's going on in the world. So, there are these monsters called Akuma, and these Akuma basically go around killing for the purpose of evolving, and they just keep on killing and killing and killing until they can evolve. And Alan explains that as a exorcist, he works for the church, and his job is to kill said Akuma. As you can imagine, the police do not believe him and think he's a crazy person. Obviously, because she's a witness that was there, Moore is able to explain that Alan is not the culprit. The chief of police, pissed off, says, "Just screw off, I don't want to deal with you anymore." So Alan's set free, and Moore decides to basically take custody of him because he's a witness, and they go to her place where they meet her brother. Now, Alan is trying to convince her that Akuma are real, but she doesn't believe it, obviously. And he explains, once again, world building, Akuma aren't actually demons. They're weapons created by the devil for the purposes of wiping out humanity. And most of the time, they actually look human. The reason for this is because the way an Akuma is created, the devil, known as the Millennium Earl, appears before you after a family member or loved one dies, and then he tells you he can bring them back to life. All you have to do is say their name, and by doing this, he brings them back to life in a new body. This skeletal thing, which then is now under the control of the Millennium Earl, murders the one who summons them, and then shoves themselves into that person's body, and this is what finally forms the true Akuma weapon. The merging of a dead person's soul with a living person's body. Now, the cop's brother is actually the local priest who's suffering from a massive case of depression, or at least that's what everyone believes. In reality, his wife died about 6 months ago, and he, of course, was visited by the Millennium Earl. And so, his wife was turned into an Akuma and is currently wearing his body as a skin suit. Alan then reveals an ability that he has, which is a cursed eye that allows him to see the souls of the dead. The souls of Akuma. So he gets one look at the priest, and he realizes that he's an Akuma. In fact, he's the Akuma that has been killing people for a while now. All exorcists wear the same robes, and seeing Alan the exorcist, and the fact that he knows that's an Akuma, it basically realizes that the jig is up, and decides to just transform in front of both of them. At that moment, you can imagine Moore is just broken. One, she comes to the realization that Akuma are real, like demons are an actual thing, but more importantly, she didn't just lose her sister-in-law, this also means she lost her brother. Obviously, the Akuma attacks, and Alan uses his body to block the Akuma's bullet. These are special bullets that, even if it grazes you, you will die. It's this type of poison that's like a curse that infects the entire body at once and turns you to dust. And what makes this curse even more evil is the fact that when the body turns to dust, it releases a poison just like the bullet that can then kill even more people, which then turn to dust and continues to spread the poison. Obviously, the attack was a massive explosion, and so all the cops just rush in because multiple buildings just got blown to shit. They all see the Akuma, freak out, start unloading it with their guns, but mortal weapons cannot affect an Akuma. And the Akuma responds by shooting all of them and turning them all to dust. Alan then does the job of an exorcist, where he cleaves through the Akuma with his innocence, which in his case is his left arm. kills it instantly, and the trapped soul of the priest's wife, Claire, is released, and she actually thanks Alan for freeing her, for ascending up to heaven. And that will be the last time we see more. Poor girl had her entire life ruined, but that's how it goes. The next minor character that becomes a catalyst for world building is a kid named Jan. Alan meets him when he's screaming in the middle of the street about Akumas, and all the adults are telling him to shut up. Obviously, as an exorcist, Alan runs in to help, but there doesn't seem any Akuma around, and everyone is like, hey, don't worry about it, it doesn't matter. But the kid is still going, no, I saw it. It was a big fat man with an umbrella. Killed a homeless man. I saw it, and he turned to an Akuma. The homeless man just feigned innocence because, it's just a stupid kid after all. After the adults leave, the homeless man then reveals that, it is an Akuma, and he's about to kill the kid. But of course, Alan saw through it with his cursed eye, kills the Akuma. So Jan, apparently, is the son of a worker for the Black Order, the section of the church that kills Akumas for a living. His dad is not an exorcist, but he is part of the team that investigates, discovers, and helps kill Akuma. Obviously, they're not supposed to share this information with their family, which he didn't, but Jan decided to just sneak into his dad's office and read all of his papers and learned about the Millennium Earl, the Akuma, the Exorcist, and all of that. The fact that he just had it stored in his house really is just irresponsible of this man. Either way, Alan is trying to convince Jan to forget all about Akuma, the Millennium Earl, the Black Order, everything. Just pretend you don't know anything, because that will attract danger. Jan doesn't care, he ignores him, is able to run away. While back at his home, a giant mansion, Jan is visited by his best friend, Leo, who apparently has been sharing information about the Millennium Earl with him as well, and so he's super excited by the fact that he finally met the Millennium Earl, or at least saw him. He draws a picture of what he looks like, and is basically just going on and on to Leo, but then Leo stops him and says, hey, I want to show you something. And so the two of them basically leave as Alan comes to his place of residence to convince him to stop looking into the Millennium Earl. Leo takes Jan to the graveyard. That should have been suspicious, but they're best friends and they're kids as well, where they bump into the Millennium Earl. Of course, Jan recognizes him because he saw him turn the dude into an Akuma, throws a onion bomb in his face, grabs Leo and tries to run away, but Leo refuses to budge, where it's revealed that his best friend is in fact an Akuma. Leo is confused because the two of them knew everything about the Millennium Earl. They knew what Akumas were, and they knew what would happen if you took a deal from the Millennium Earl. So why would his friend Leo ever do that? But the fact of the matter is, he's a kid, and his mom just died. And even though he knew what was going to happen to him, even though he knew he was turning his mother into a monster, to be cursed, to be a weapon forever, and that he himself was going to be killed by his mother, all reason and logic left, and all that mattered to him was bringing back his mother. And so Leo made the deal with the Millennium Earl and died. And this is when Jan realizes what Alan was trying to warn him about. Knowing about the Millennium Earl, knowing about all of this, is actually what led Leo down this path. If he didn't know the Millennium Earl existed, odds are he probably never would have summoned him. And if he never would have summoned him, he wouldn't be dead right now. So Jan legitimately blames himself and begs Alan to kill the Akuma and free Leo's mother. Alan then finally kills all the Akumas and sets all the souls free. The Millennium Earl gets away. A few days pass. Alan checks up on Jan, who is currently making a marker for his friend's grave. Currently, it's believed that Leo just ran away. But since Jan is the only one who actually knows the truth, he decided he should make his friend a grave marker. After this, he promises Alan to keep his mouth shut, but he's not done with all of this. He plans on studying, working on his inventions, and so one day he can join the Black Order like his father and fight the Akuma. Alan says, you know what, that's actually a pretty good plan. As long as you keep your mouth shut at the moment, what you do as an adult is perfectly okay. And Alan heads off. Okay, now that all that world building is done, we can finally talk about Alan Walker properly. So on the second page of the first chapter, there's a line that says, the imaginary end of the 19th century. Now this is pretty significant because the story takes place in the 19th century, or a very gothic version of the 19th century. It's even got a moon with a face that's laughing. But here's the thing, the word imaginary. Now, you assume it's because of the laughing moon and the very gothic aesthetic, that's where it comes from. At least, that's what you would think when you first watch it. But once again, I'm caught up with the series, so that actually has another meaning, and I'm so glad I reread the beginning, because when you see that, it's like, oh my god. Once again, no spoilers, but if you know, you know. But we're talking about Alan, and one of the first things you learn about him is that he's a very serious person, even though he might seem outrageous and goofy in some cases. Most of the time, he's actually a very serious character. He understands just how important his job as an exorcist is, and because he's the only person in the world who actually can see Akuma souls, he understands just the tragedy of the world he lives in. Now, how does he have this power to see the souls of Akuma when no one else can? Well, the answer to that goes back to when he was a child. And we see Alan's memory. When he was being raised by a clown known as Mana. Mana was a very simple circus clown who eventually dies, leaving Alan all by himself. And of course, the Millennium Earl shows up and offers Alan the chance to bring Mana back. Alan goes along with this as a child, and Mana, instead of immediately killing Alan, he actually decides to curse him. And I don't mean curse him out, I mean literally place a curse on him, specifically on one of his eyes, where now permanently sees the souls of Akuma whenever one just happens to walk past him. And this is a big deal because Akuma souls are people that are themselves cursed. And so whenever he sees an Akuma soul, it is always in complete agony and suffering. They are literally bound spirits that look like they're having their very life force sucked out of them to power the Akuma weapon. And so this leads Alan to actually pity Akumas because he can actually see what they are. And Alan pitying Akumas is actually a very big deal, but we'll get to that in the future. So when Mana finishes cursing Alan, the innocence in his left arm activates for the first time, killing Mana, freeing his soul. After this, he's then discovered by his master, Cross. And for the next few years, Alan is basically dragged around the world by Cross, being trained by him as an exorcist, until eventually Cross decides Alan must go to the Black Order. Thing is, he personally hates the Black Order, and he doesn't want to go back. So he decides to then knock Alan the fuck out with a mallet and just abandons him in India. And so then Alan has to make his journey to Europe on his own to the Black Order. And the only thing Cross left him was his golem, Tim Campy, as a guide, saving both people and Akuma along the way, including Moranjan that I mentioned earlier. We also get a short introduction to the main villain, the Millennium Earl, a man that has been around for thousands of years. He looks like a fat man wearing a Halloween mask for a face with a talking umbrella, and he truly is the epitome of evil. His one and sole goal in life is to wipe out humanity. A literal quote from him is, "I am the creator of the Akuma, Earl of the Millennium. I will destroy the corrupted god and an end to this world." Why does he want all that? Well, it's not really explained just yet. We just know that he's just absolute evil. When Alan actually makes it to the Black Order, it's actually a giant clusterfuck because the Black Order is run by Kamui, at least this section is, and he's kind of a scatterbrained who also doesn't really focus on more than one thing at a time. And as a result of this, when Alan gets there, they have no idea who he is or that he was even coming, even though Cross sent a letter to Kamui personally. And so when the Gate Guardian, which is a giant talking face on the wall, created either through science or alchemy, starts to talk and examine Alan, he notices the curse on his eye and determines that Alan is in fact an ally of the Millennium Earl. This then prompts one of the extras inside to come out and attack him, Kanda. Kanda, to put bluntly, is a very serious, stoic man who basically solves everything with violence. There's no other word for it. The first thing he does is immediately attack Alan as he's trying to talk to him. But Kanda is also very smart, and he actually understands that Kanda, the guy he works for, is kind of an idiot and a scatterbrain. And so when Alan says he is in fact an exorcist, and General Cross sent a letter mentioning him, that's when Kanda just stops his attack before he kills Alan. That doesn't mean he puts his sword away, though. He makes sure to keep it against Alan's throat until his story can either be confirmed or rejected. Of course, Alan was telling the truth, and Kanda puts his sword away, and Alan is let inside the base. Now, this doesn't mean Kanda trusts or even likes Alan. In fact, he even refuses to shake his hand because he's a cursed person. So when Alan finally gets to go inside the Black Order, he's given a tour by Lena Lee. All we know about her at this moment is that she is the younger sister of the chief, Kamui, and that she's actually a very bright and cheerful girl. She takes him all over the base, even explains to him that the Black Order is basically home to most people because you basically have to go out on a mission and then return to rest and then go out on another mission, like a standard job kind of thing. So most people find find it easier to make the Black Order their home, but there are those who decide they just don't want to be a part of it, like Cross. At the end of the tour, she takes him to the medical bay because when he was being attacked by Kana, his arm was sliced. In other words, his innocence was sliced. And here we learn things about innocence that we didn't already know. One is that there are different types of innocence. For example, Alan's is called a paramecia type because the innocence embeds into the body and changes it a weapon. Unlike Kana's, which is inside of an item, his sword. And so to repair his innocence, his hand, his arm, Alan has to go through horrific surgery. Quite painful, actually. And part of the process of going through the surgery, he also has received a major anesthetic, so he can't transform his arm for 24 hours. This is partially done because they don't want him hurting a particular individual. So, Kamui then takes Alan to a group of men sitting in chairs. These men are the commander-in-chiefs. They're basically the leadership of the Black Order. And Alan needs to be examined if he truly is a proper apostle of God. And the one who does the examination is, I can only describe as a giant monster-looking thing. Her name is Hibaraska, and it's unclear if she's a human who is a storage unit for innocence, or it's a combination of many instances together, or some third thing altogether. All I know is that her job is to examine Alan, the innocence, and to see if this person is worthy of being an exorcist, of being an apostle of God. As you can imagine, Alan is freaking out, scared out of his mind, and tries to activate his innocence. And of course, the anesthetic he was given is preventing that. And when he does finally activate his innocence, it looks like his arm is made of rubber, basically. So Hibaraska basically is able to go inside of you in a sense, where she's able to understand the connection between you and your innocence, and she can literally put it to a percentage amount. Basically, how much have you synthesized with your innocence? And she determines that Alan is currently at 83%. And she also received a prophecy. In the future, Alan will be known as the Time Destroyer. So after all of that, Alan finally gets an explanation of what innocence is, because apparently Cross decided just to keep everything secret from him up until this point, and he finally understands what his mission is as an exorcist. And that is, centuries ago, a cube was discovered. This cube had words written on it, and when it was finally translated, it told a story of a man defeating the Millennium Earl 7,000 years ago in a battle that led to the end of the world known as the Flood of Noah. And the individual who defeated the Earl used innocence to do so, but he wasn't able to kill the Millennium Earl. And so, the cube warns that the Millennium Earl will return. And when that happens, the Earl will win this time, destroying the world completely and wiping out humanity forever. And your only shred of hope is finding people who can use innocence as a way to fight back against the Earl and prevent this apocalypse from happening. Alan understands his mission and agrees to join the Black Order and fight against the Earl and the Akuma. While in his room, Alan is actually looking at a picture of what looks to be a crying jester who is chained, forced to carry a coffin. Very creepy picture, actually. And it reminds him of his adopted father, Mana, and the fact that they have the last name Walker. And he says that he'll keep his promise and keep walking. No matter what happens, no matter what it costs, he'll keep on his path. He'll keep walking. Basically what this means symbolically is that no matter what trouble he faces, no matter what pain he goes through, no matter what hardship he suffers, he won't give up. He'll keep fighting. He'll keep moving forward. And of course, this is extremely important to who Alan is as a character, because he doesn't know it just yet, but he's going to have to suffer through tragedy and find the strength to keep walking forward. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you can enjoy more D. Gray Man and other many things. Thank you and have a great day.